Is this thing on? Okay. 5, 4, 3. Hi, everybody. Dugroz here with Dugroz Reports. Welcome to my Saturday morning live stream. Today is Saturday, July the 12th, 2025, and I'm reporting live from my house. Good to see each and every one of you on board this morning. Thank you so much for taking the time to join me. I see Nick is on board, says he's back. Ian says, thank God he's back. Silly family time. We are your family, Dugroz. You're right. What was I thinking? Dimitri G was anticipating the 543. Rex Blind made it in here. TM Cowling, Seabass. Good to see each and every one of you. Thank you so much for joining me. In case you're wondering, I was unavailable the last 2 Saturday mornings, and that's because, as you may have deduced from little clues here and there, my family was traveling. We were taking our biannual, or is it semi-annual, every other year international summer vacation. We were in the United Kingdom and Austria during the last 2 Saturdays. And I thought about live streaming while on vacation, but in both cases, they were Saturday mornings immediately following a travel day. And also, I was like 6 hours ahead of y'all, so I would have had to go live in the middle of the afternoon. And it would have been rearranging plans and like taking out a whole day of like doing stuff and seeing stuff, and didn't want to go down that path. I see 27 people on board. Thanks for being here, everyone. Click the thumbs up button if you've not yet done so. That drives more people in here to watch the show, and then they can see what's going on. So traditionally on Saturday mornings, I start off with Dugroz data points. These are just little bits and pieces of information from around the world of points and miles that I find interesting. Hopefully you do as well. And if you find any of them to be especially interesting, I sure wouldn't mind if you drop a little donation, a super chat or a gifted membership or something. Even $1 helps out here and there. Happy Tom says, good to have you back. Thanks, Happy. I appreciate that, Tom. Today is no different. I will go around the horn with Dugroz data points. We're going to start off with a few that are general, but most of them, honestly, are going to be personal data points. Not a whole lot of breaking news type stuff today because I've been distracted. We got back on Tuesday of this week late. Wednesday was kind of a recovery day. Didn't start work again until Thursday. So I've really only had about 2 full days to adjust here. But let's go ahead and dive in, and then we'll catch you up later. Today's theme of the day is all about using Hilton credits, Hilton gift cards, that kind of stuff, these pesky little gift cards, Surpass card, the business platinum that give you little something or another here there at Hilton, and how I milked that for all it was worth on this trip. So that's what we'll get into. But first, the data points. So let's see. How do I operate this infernal contraption? Got to remember how to share my screen here. So hearkening back to a previous travel, not the one that just finished, actually in April of this year, I went out to upstate New York and saw Matt Clausen while I was there. And in the course of driving around upstate New York, got some tolls, and it was through Dollar Car Rental. What's interesting was when I got back from vacation just now, there was a letter in the mail waiting from me from Plate Pass saying, hey, I know you've already paid some of this, but you owe us an extra $10.97. And sure enough, searched through my email and had an email to that effect as well. And to be a little more specifically, here's what the invoice looked like. And I apologize if this is difficult to read, but the original charges were down here, the Rip Van Winkle Bridge. I crossed twice, and says it was on 2 different days that Dollar Car Rental charged $9.99 a day. So I paid that part, the $24.28, and now these are posting way later, the new Pulse, New York State Thruway Authority. And what's interesting is if you look at it, they're on the same day, and one is at 2:58:03 and one's at, or excuse me, 9:58:03, one's at 9:59:02. So 59 seconds apart. I actually remember this. I was driving, and it was one of those where like one highway meets another, and you have to take this exit to go north and this exit to go south. And I took the wrong one, but they kind of ran along each other for a while, the on-ramp and the off-ramp. And this was like 10 o'clock at night, and there was no one around. So I just slowed down to about 10 miles an hour, went between a couple cones and did a U-turn, and then went back and looped around and got on the correct on-ramp. But that's why I on-ramped twice in the scope of 59 seconds. So that left a balance due of $10.97, which I had to pay. So just kind of funny that the state of New York was so inefficient that they waited 3 months to bill me for the second one. On the first grouping, the $24 one, I used my US Bank Altitude Reserve, hoping it would trigger real-time rewards, but it did not. So this time around, I paid the toll with my Aeroplan card, hoping that I can pay myself back on that. This was just yesterday or maybe Thursday. It is still pending, but the sign looks good because there's a little picture of an airplane. And generally, if there's a little picture of an airplane, you can pay yourself back on those because it will code as some sort of travel. Perhaps one of those things where US Bank doesn't define travel quite as broadly as Chase. So if you have to pay plate pass charges, Altitude Reserve doesn't work for wiping out those charges. Aeroplan does work for wiping out those charges. What did I miss while I was describing all of that? Let's see here. Ian says, where did you go? This most recent trip, I was in the United Kingdom and Austria, and I'll get to that in a little bit. TM Cowling says, good to hear that the Ritz card is staying put for now anyways. That's my understanding. I've only watched 1 or 2 Matt Clausen videos, so I haven't got a lot of info about that, but I'm sure I'll catch up in time. But yeah, sounds like Chase is denying any changes in the near future. We'll see what happens. Hey, look, Seabass drops a $9.99 super chat. Whoa, way to get the ball rolling, Seabass. Celebrate. I appreciate that. Every little bit helps, so thank you. And then here's a good friend of the channel, John R. Dugroz, here with Dugroz Reports, and drops a very steady and consistent, as always, $2 super chat. Celebrate. Thank you, John. Very much appreciated. Jay Chains has arrived. Rex says, meh work. Not sure what that's referencing. Good morning, everyone, says D Green. Rex says, Matt is either a giant Jawa or hermit Jedi. Won't argue with you. Ian says, nice. I didn't know this was your big trip. Hope to hear about it. Yes, there will be little bits and pieces broken down. I'm not going to do a full trip breakdown today because that would take forever. I'm going to have to do some dedicated videos, those kind of things. So I'm going to focus on some of like the data pointy type stuff, not so much the where I went and what I did, although I'll make a few comments here and there. I'm going to try to hit the first half of the trip data points this live stream, and then either next live stream or a future live stream, do the second half of the trip. I do need to get back to my path series eventually. But yes, this was the big trip. I generally don't announce the dates I'm going way in advance because I don't think the whole world needs to know that. So I just kind of sprung it on you. Absolutely. Thank you for asking. Hey, 51 people on board. That's pretty good. Please keep on clicking that thumbs up button and making comments. That does help drive people in. Next, Dugroz data point. So I woke up one day after my vacation was done and found there was a credit of $89 on my State Farm Business Cash Visa Rewards. And this is kind of an obscure card. I've actually got it right here. If you want to see what it looks like, it's got the State Farm logo up there in the corner. It's a Visa. It's issued by US Bank. This card is, it's a business card. It gives 0% for a year. That's the main reason I got it. It gives 3% cash back on insurance premiums capped at $4,000 a year, which is kind of meh, not great. But I did open the card a little over a year ago, in part to help carry a zero balance. That has now been paid off. But what this is all about is I've been charging my Adobe Spark premiums to this card for the last year. You can see here $10.59 charged by Adobe. Adobe Spark is the program I use to make my thumbnails and my amazing AI generated images that you all love and those kind of things. I'm holding a giant hamburger, that kind of stuff. Like several of the US Bank business cards, it has that feature where if you have a digital media credit or computer or something like that credit, 12 months in a row, it'll give you a $100 promotion. So Basically, I'm paying somewhere around $125 a year, get $100 back. So, hey, I get a year of Adobe Spark functionally for about $25. So just wanted to point out that it did work. I'd had a previous card, Triple Cash, where I did it on a overseas company that was digital media that like helped you optimize your thumbnails and search terms on YouTube. I don't use it anymore. I can do it on my own now. But that one didn't trigger the credit because it coded as something else that they didn't like. But at least Adobe does work for that promo credit, that $100 once a year. And actually, I'll probably be canceling the card out now because I have a new business cash, which I've actually got laying around right here. I talked about that 3 weeks ago on my last live stream. Let me biganize myself. There it is, which has the exact same benefit. So there's really no need to keep my State Farm card. I won't use it that. And it's a business card, so not a lot of harm in canceling that. So that was good news. Let's see where things are here. Juan Garcia's on board, says good morning. Ian asks, were I happy with the flights? That was a mixed bag. Some I was happy with, some I was not happy with. And I'll get to that a little bit later, actually, so you read my mind. QC Man welcomes me back. Thank you. Cesar says, happy to see me live. Thank you, brother. Appreciate that. And Seabass mentions, Dugroz eats. I'll have some eats in this show. Don't you worry. TM Cowling says, good data point. I'll have to try with my Adobe Photoshop subscription. I know for sure it works on both of these cards, the State Farm business card and the Triple Cash, which are both U.S. Bank business cards. There might be others. Does the Connect have that? I can't remember if it does or does not. QCMS says $25 for Adobe is actually pretty good. Adobe Spark is sort of like the minor league version of Photoshop for people like me that don't really know what they're doing. Brady Smith is on board and has been a member for 2 months. Awesome. Thanks for being a member, Brady. I appreciate that. Thanks, Ian. Yuri BSU is here. Good morning, all. I hope the Rose fam had a nice vacation. Indeed, we did. Thank you, everyone. Hey, 57 people on board. That's not too bad. Moving on, data points. This is just a personal one, maybe a little bit of bragging that both TransUnion and Equifax are now over 800 points on my credit score. Not really a big deal, just, something to throw in the face of people that are like, well, if you have that many credit cards, isn't it gonna hurt your credit score? Nope, it's fine, actually. No problem at all. Next data point, and this one comes courtesy of friend of the channel, Ron B. Turkish had a promotion out where if you fly to 6 different continents in a certain amount of time, you can get 1 million points. And there was obviously a lot more rules and stipulations than that. But nope, psych, they've already ended that promotion. And as I'm reading it here, basically, it looks like if you bought your first ticket before now, you can go ahead and work on the promotion. But if you haven't started, sorry, too late. So if you're hoping to do your 6-continent promotion with Turkish and get 1 million Turkish miles, if you haven't started already, you're out of luck. So I just thought that was interesting. Apparently they had way more uptake than they were anticipating. Can't imagine why. It's not like people want 1 million miles or something. QCman asked if those are UK flags in the background from my trip. Half right. They are UK flags in the background. They're not from my trip. The live stream I did 3 weeks ago was about what's in my British wallet. So I decided to celebrate by spending $3 to buy a couple Union Jacks on Amazon, and just haven't had time. I haven't taken the time to take them down yet, but it is thematic, so no harm. Juan says, Doug, your thoughts on the Built 2.0 announcement and what multipliers you see on the $95 and $4.95 annual fee now that they're moving away from Wells Fargo to cardless. Thanks for asking that, Juan. Can you ask me that question either next week or in about 2 weeks? Because I didn't research it whatsoever while I was gone. So I am completely void of any opinion. All right. So those are all the Dugroz data points I have to share that are sort of more universal and global in nature. Just, credit and that kind of stuff. Everything from this point forward relates to the trip that just ended. So this is not the theme of the day, but it's sort of like maybe a miniature theme. So just to bring you up to speed, if you're not familiar, my family on June 25th, which was a Wednesday, not last Wednesday, not the one before that, but the one before that. So more than 2 weeks ago, flew from Des Moines, Iowa to New York City. and then New York City to Manchester, England. And from there, we spent 10 days in Europe. Most of that was in the United Kingdom, both England and Wales. And then we had 3 days on the back end in Vienna, Austria. You know, the United Kingdom has that terrible tax on business class flights departing the UK. So the strategy I went with was to find a different country I could depart from Europe without those terrible fees and save some money out of pocket that way. And the deal I found was based out of Vienna, Austria. So Austria it was. Also, that's my country of origin. If you trace my family background far enough on one particular side of the family, you'll find this particular ancestor of mine, Gebhard Shea, which very clearly is an ancestor of mine, obviously. So we packed up and got ready to go the day before that. First thing I wanted to mention is packing, just an interesting data point. So you'll see in the top right here, I've got like a round wheel. That's one of those chirp wheels, although mine is a generic knockoff for exercising your back, like stretching it out. And I found that if you pack around it, you can actually fit that in your carry-on sized bag. We only brought carry-on sized bags, although we had to check it frequently because of weight limitations on some of those international airlines. And this is the third time now, I believe, that the Des Moines airport has really not liked that and had to do a hand check and take it out and swab it because it's suspicious. For some reason, no other airport cared. Munich, Germany didn't care. Manchester, England didn't care. JFK didn't care. But Des Moines, Iowa, doggone it, they were really interested in inspecting that. QC man can definitely see the family resemblance. So that was just kind of interesting. Nick says celebrating July 4th in the country we run it from, screaming America Bald Eagle. Yeah, I thought maybe my boys and I should walk into the city square and just start singing the national anthem at one point. But I don't know, maybe that wouldn't have gone over too well. I did see a funny meme that was like George Washington on horseback, and it said something like, "Hey, England, enjoy working today." Something like that. We hit our first snag of the journey right away. This is a picture of, I think, a Delta plane. It's definitely at the Des Moines airport. We were flying on Delta, and it was supposed to be a nonstop flight from Des Moines to New York LaGuardia. We would spend the night, transit over to JFK, and continue on from there. And the plane from wherever it was coming from landed, and those passengers disembarked. And then about 45 minutes before we were supposed to take off, the gate agent got on the horn and said, "I have some bad news, everyone, and I apologize. Your flight has been canceled. And the reason why your flight has been canceled is because of bad weather in the New York City metro area, and they just don't have capacity for us. And by the way, because this is a weather-based cancellation, we will not be issuing any vouchers for lodging or food. However, you're welcome to get in line now, and we can make alternative flight arrangements." So I'm like, well, that stinks, but also really weird. I pulled up my phone and looked at the radar around New York City, and there was like one little tiny blob. So I messaged Matt Clausen because I know he lives in the New York area, and I'm like, "Are you guys actually having any bad weather right now? This sounds like a really convenient excuse." And he basically said, "We don't have any storms or anything. We just have really high temperature. It's been like 105 degrees for 3 days in a row," or something like that. So I don't have any proof, and there's no way I'm ever going to be able to prove it, but I can't help but wonder if, because of the high temperature, some of their ground crew and support staff at the airport was calling in sick or getting overheated and dehydrated. But it was a lot handier to call it weather than a staffing shortage. And they didn't even delay the flight. They just straight up canceled it. So I wasn't about to go stand in line behind the other 30 plebeians who were in line to get their flights rebooked. So instead of doing that, I was like, "Come on, Doug, you're not a frequent flyer, but you're enough of a miler that you can make arrangements to do this." So I decided to do it all through my phone. Now, one interesting aspect was that I had used my Aeroplan card to book 4 seat upgrades from regular economy to Comfort Plus, and that was like $52 each. So my first thought was, am I going to be able to get Comfort Plus seats? I kind of doubt it, but I did get on the Delta app By the way, I actually booked this using Wells Fargo points through the Wells Fargo portal because I have that grandfathered Golden Ponies card, which gives you 1.5 cents per point. Sometimes people say things like, oh, if you have a cancellation, you're going to be in big trouble. Well, you know what? I put in my frequent flyer number. It flowed through to Delta. I never had to deal with Wells Fargo once. I just dealt directly with Delta with all of this. But basically, here's my chat with Delta. And they're like, well, there's another flight later. And I said, can you check other airlines? But I already got on Google. There was nothing direct until the next morning. I'm like, that's going to be cutting it too close. I don't want to have to transit across New York City from LaGuardia to JFK the same day we land. That's just too stressful and too tight. So I'm like, fine, I'll take a flight with a layover. So the only option was to have a layover in Atlanta. And I said, if there's any upgrades available, that would be preferred. Unfortunately, there are no upgrades. And they rebooked me on a flight that instead of this nice leisurely flight at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, there was a direct flight, had to go from Des Moines to Atlanta and then have a layover and then Atlanta to JFK. So I ended up not even touching LaGuardia at all, which ended up being kind of silly because the hotel that we booked was halfway between LaGuardia and JFK. And if I'd known, I would have just booked it close to JFK, but hindsight and all that. So yeah, instead of this nice, convenient middle of the day direct flight, ended up having this really late flight at like 7 o'clock in the evening. The second flight was like close to midnight. By the time we got to JFK, collected or got off the plane, got outside, called an Ubered all the way to the hotel, which was further away than it needed to be. It was 3 o'clock in the flipping morning. And the whole idea was, well, we want to get to bed promptly because we're going to be adjusting in the new time zone. Well, so much for that idea. And then the follow-up on that was that I submitted I'm not sure what they call it, but you know how like last fall, the Department of Transportation, when it was still Pete Buttigieg in charge, issued some guidance that basically said, if your flight is canceled or delayed for any reason, even if it's weather and the airline can't accommodate you, like they have to refund your original form of payment, anything like seat upgrades or priority boarding or that kind of stuff. I sent a restitution form to Delta and I said, our flight was canceled, seat upgrades, notice plural upgrades, could not be honored for the replacement flight. I insist on a full refund of my original form of payment. Because what they did is they sent me an email that says, don't worry, you will automatically get vouchers that you can apply to future flights. And I'm like, I don't want vouchers. I want a full refund. And the government says I'm entitled to one. So I insisted on that. But then they were dorks about it. And instead of refunding me all four, they refunded one to my original form of payment. So I now have a second flight cancellation resolution form out with Delta saying, hey, morons, refund the other three also, please. That kind of ticks me off because you know the airlines are doing it on purpose. They know that my flight was canceled, and they know that they put me in a regular economy seat, not a Comfort Plus seat. Their flight systems could be robust enough to just automatically refund that, but instead they make you jump through these hoops because they're hoping a certain percent of people won't ask for refunds. They can keep that money and keep them as flight vouchers that maybe you'll forget to use. Or maybe even if you don't, at least they have more cash flow. So that kind of torqued me off with Delta a little bit, that A, they force you to jump through hoops to get the restitution. And B, I said flights, plural, for all four family members, and they only refunded one of them. They should, any common sense, you should know that. Let me catch up on comments. I got a little behind here. Where were we? I already did that comment. FC dropped a $4.99 super sticker. Thank you so much, FC. Celebrate. Man, I really appreciate it, guys. Every little bit helps. TM Calix says, did the Flighty app give you a heads up on the cancellation? It did, actually, but not by enough to make a substantial difference. I think it was while the gate agent was making her announcement, I got the ding on my phone from Flighty. So I wasn't planning to stand in line anyway, but if I had wanted to, it wouldn't have helped. Now, I had another time where I had a change or something, and my Flightly thing dinged about 7 minutes before everybody else got the notice, so I was able to cut to the front of the line. Rodrigo says, I think the U.S. Bank Visa Infinite card would be perfect for you now that the CSR is an expensive coupon book, but sounds like getting it is hard. Oh, you said UBS Visa Infinite. I might look into that, yeah. Ian says, that's what you get for flying at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Should have taken the first flight. Apparently, I should have. Lesson learned. QC Man gifts 1 Dugroz Report membership. That's just as good as a $3 super chat. Celebrate. Thank you. Ian says, do you regret originally planning on an overnight repositioning flight now? No, not at all, because it should have worked just fine. I mean, irregular operations are irregular operations. So, I mean, I had thought about taking a flight like early in the morning to get to LaGuardia, transiting across town. But I don't know. It just seems like, I mean, when we got to New York City, what was supposed to be like a 45-minute ride from our hotel to the airport ended up being like an hour and 15 minutes. And I know I just would have been stressing. Hey, SOC Prof NY got the free membership. Thank you for donating that. That was a bastard move by Delta, says QC Man. Cesar says, the worst part is that most airlines issue refunds individually for each passenger. United did that to me. Yeah, in my second restitution form, I said each of the 3 remaining on this booking code. It's just one booking code. So they should know. The algorithm gods were on your side, Sox Professor. Yeah, absolutely. Mertz is on board and says he's back. Awesome. Thanks for being here, Mertz. All right, so that was my first hiccup, but smooth sailing for the most part to get to Europe from there. So the next day we woke up, got to the airport, JFK more specifically, and my goal was to go to the Capital One Lounge, but we got there with about 4 hours before our flight, and they were strictly enforcing the maximum of 3 hours before your flight thing. So instead, I diverted to a priority pass lounge, and they didn't really seem to care, although I did say, well, we had kind of like an overnight layover. We actually got here at like 3 a.m. last night, so boy, we're tired. We'd love to go to the lounge or something like that. And that lounge didn't even ask. So this is the priority pass lounge that was in the same concourse as our gate. It was called the Hello Sky Lounge. It wasn't terrible, but it wasn't super impressive. I know the folks over at Stack Your Points podcast once did an episode called A Cookie and a Sad Salad Bar. It was a notch above that. They did have these food items that had meatballs, which were surprisingly good. Some sort of warm pasta. I didn't go back for more, but it tasted good because I knew I'd be going on to Capital One. Hummus and a dip. The hummus was good. Rice, mixed veggies. Succotash is what some people call it. Is that succotash? If anybody's an expert on what succotash is, let me know. I know the cat from Looney Tunes says suffering succotash. Ian says, my billionaire clients have the UBS card. Definitely hard to get, but benefits seem solid based on recent FM podcasts. I don't remember what you do for a living, Ian, but congrats on having billionaire clients. That's awesome. And also, maybe I can trick him into thinking I'm a billionaire. He is, no thanks to Delta. I'm not sure what that's in reference to, but I agree. Hello, Sky Looks. What's the word that you taught me? Cromulent. It is a perfectly cromulent lounge. It's not great. It's not terrible. It's cromulent, acceptable. Here's a widescreen picture. I want you to look at this picture carefully and see along with me if you can see what's wrong here. So these 2 girls here, I'm gonna call people out. I'm gonna name names. I don't know if it's one with the back one facing me, but was out of her computer going across the aisle because the nearest outlet was over here. I started walking towards it, didn't see it till the last second. I almost tripped. And I'm sure if you're the kind of person that doesn't care about people tripping, is willing to do that, had I tripped and knocked your computer down, she would have been far more concerned with the state of her laptop than my health. So don't be that person who stretches your cord across an entire row, unless you're going to hang a piece of paper across it or something like that. So, but yeah, you can see in the background there's, some seating. There's that small buffet, not a lot going on. Okay, so now let's move on to the big show here. So we know there were negative changes announced about Venture Lounge access starting in February. You have to pay a fee if you're an authorized user, and guests are no longer free, that kind of stuff. But you know what? It's not February yet, so I don't have to worry about that yet. So here she is in all her glory, the Capital One Lounge at JFK, which I don't remember for sure, but I think it only opened like a month or 6 weeks before I got there. So it still had that new lounge smell. It was very fresh and all that. The food was really good, although an observation I do have is the food was a little too fancy for my boys. They didn't want these fancy things with foreign sounding names. Like this is basically just roast beef with mashed potatoes, but it's disguised as something much fancier. This is a chicken breast with some veggies laying on top of it. It's not like super weird or super spicy or anything, but they look at it and they're like, ew, brother, ew, just give me a hamburger, give me some chicken strips, give me some plain bread with butter on it or something like that. The mac and cheese, unfortunately, my son, it wasn't plain old regular Kraft, it had crumblies on it, but I thought it was flippin' delicious. In fact, I went back for seconds on the mac and cheese. Looking around the lounge, here's some seating. Hey, who's that guy right there? I don't know. Got a curved booth there for the family. Wasn't quite as big as I had hoped, but it was still more than cromulent. There's a seat looking out the window. If you're a plane spotter, you can do some looking at planes and stuff. It's not like the best view ever of planes, but it's okay. Here's a picture of me holding up some orange Fanta or something like that. And funny enough, I knew that one of the channel friends, Fly and Ryan, was going to be flying through the same lounge a couple weeks later. And he actually sent me a picture of this exact same photo, him recreating the photo in the exact same position. Here's some more seating in the Capital One Lounge area. You know, everybody's pulling down these books, getting ready to read them, of course. Just, you know, some benches and stuff. I do like they have a QR code at every table where you can scan and they'll bring you food to your table. They also have kind of like a little sandwich bar. There was a little bit of a failure with the sandwich bar, though, because it's like bagel sandwiches where they cut a bagel in half, toast it, make it to your liking. And they had all these pre-made ones you can order, but then they still make it for you, like the Greek special where it's toasted just this way and has just this sauce on it and all this stuff. And I walked up to him and said something like, I have a son who is kind of particular. And I said, I just want the plainest sandwich ever. Here's what I want: a plain bagel with no sauce of any kind, ham, and a slice of cheese. That's it. Basically, bread, cheese, meat, nothing else. And they screwed that up. They put coleslaw on it. I don't know how you do that. I have a feeling it was a button clicking error. And actually, there was a guy who got his order right before me, and I wonder if maybe they swapped ours around. So Carl got my plain one. I got Carl's with coleslaw. Fortunately, my son was able to tolerate it anyway. But it's like, how do you screw that up? That was the plainest one there is. I'll finish up the Capital One Lounge, and then we'll get into catching up on comments. Of course, one of the best things about a decent lounge is the bathroom. They did have private bathrooms, which was very nice, and you know, a private potty. It's the one at a timers, the one holers, if you will. I actually just by random chance got the handicap bathroom at one point, and it's huge, gigantic. It's got a baby changing table where I put my bag down there. Now, if you look in the background, you'll see there was a little bit of a problem. They need to work on their nice new lounge. The lamp was dangling off the wall with the circuit breakers showing and all that. So, oops, got a little work to do. And then I think this will play as a video, but if not, I apologize. It won't. I'm sorry. Let me open it separately here. 1 second. I don't want full screen. I'm not the world's best technology guy. I'm going to play a video for you if I can. Share screen, share a different screen. Stop sharing. Share, as my kids would say when they're like 2. Share. Here it is. Okay, hopefully this works. Prepare for loud audio. I apologize if it's loud. These were books in the bathroom. That's all. Hopefully you were able to hear that. If not, basically the gist is they put decorative books in the bathroom of the Capital One Lounge, and I grabbed one like, as if I was going to read it while in the bathroom. They're literally glued down. They're decorative. You can't actually use them. So yeah, there's my incredibly random Dugroz data point. All right, that's the end of the Capital One Lounge segment. Let me catch up here. Is this the former prime class lounge? Looks like upgrade the food a little. I don't know the answer to that because I'm not real familiar with JFK. QC says, good call out, Doug. Let's not sugarcoat it. That's dumb and inconsiderate. I'm assuming you're talking about the girl with her cord going all the way across an aisle, fully blocking it. Jeffrey Pacone says, hello, I'm wanting to apply for my first Wells Fargo credit card. I hope that works out for you, Jeffrey. Thanks for being here. Don't think we've met before. QC Man was, in fact, referring to the computer cord girls. Did I go to the cheesemonger? I should have mentioned that. So in the JFK Capital One Lounge, you go to the very end, kind of take a left. There's a thing called the cheesemonger, where it's like this cheese shop, kind of. Big wheels of cheese. I wanted to jokingly walk up and say, I'll take that one, pointing to, an entire like 10-pound cheese wheel. And they have specially trained cheese people who cut up cheese. I think the official name is a cheesemonger, but the whole thing is called the cheesemonger. I walked past it before they opened, and they said something like, do you want to learn more about this? We'll be opening in about an hour. We custom make a cheese dish for you. I'm like, I'm not going to sit here for 45 minutes to get 3 small slices of cheese, but thanks. So no, I did not do the cheesemonger. Jeffrey asks how easy it is to get approved for the Choice Privileges Select card when you don't have a Wells Fargo bank account. I don't know from experience, but if I were just to guess, as long as you have decent credit, I bet it's very easy. QC Man asks, was this the bathroom where I did the accidental live? Nope, that was in the DCA, Washington Reagan Capital One landing, which I'll get to in a future weeks. And TM Cowling says, I should be stopping by the Capital One in Dallas-Fort Worth next week. We'll see if it's not too crowded. Absolutely. All right, now back to stuff. More data points here. I got to re-enable my screen sharing. Oop, nope, that's inviting guests. I don't want that. Nope, not that. That's the settings. Come on, Doug, you got this. You know how to use technology. Ding. Okay. So once we landed in Manchester, that was on Virgin Atlantic. That flight was totally fine. No problems whatsoever. At least, no holdups, no delays, anything like that. Got our bags just fine. All that kind of stuff. That was premium economy. I'll talk about, the premium economy experience a little more in the future. But a little more on topic today. Let's talk about Hilton Honors and our first hotel we stayed at, more than just like taking a nap or repositioning, was the Hampton Inn by Hilton in York, Piccadilly. Piccadilly is just the name of a specific street there in York. There's 2 Hampton Inns. This is the Piccadilly one. And I know it seems kind of minor, but in my app before I checked in, it said your chosen gold member benefits are 1 bottle of water and 1 snack item. And you know what? They actually honored that. And they didn't just honor it. They honored it like in style. Like they gave us 2 water bottles each. And then like after I checked in, the receptionist came out from behind the counter with this large tray with a bunch of snacks and said we could each pick one. They had good snacks, like full-size candy bars, Snickers, Twix, local things, beef jerky, treats, those half-size can of Pringles. That's what I ended up choosing. So I was pretty pleased that they honored that benefit. Excuse me, folks, got to blow my nose here. Sorry about that. Can you hear me now? Hopefully you can. All right. While we were in the town of York for dining, because I know you all like the Dugroz Eat segment, one of the places we hit was called Mr. Chippy. There's my son out front posing. I would basically call, and you can see there's dining on the 2nd floor, but they actually closed the dining room right as we ordered. They were about to close for the day. So we ate outside, but that's no problem. It was a nice day. This was basically like a fancier and British version of Long John Silver's or Captain D's, but it's better than that. John says I'm loud and clear after my nose blow, so that's good. So that's what the outside of the restaurant looked like, and this is what they actually served us. Fish and chips. Of course, they call them chips. We call them fries. There's a good Jim Gaffigan sketch out there where he's like, I think the British changed the name of things just to tick us off. They'll call them fries. We'll call them chips. You say mom, we'll say mom. You say lieutenant, we'll say lieutenant. Funny bit. But yeah, the fries were meh, but the fish was like to die for. The interesting thing was it came with tartar sauce, but if you want ketchup, you had to pay extra. It was like 50 pence or something like that to get ketchup to dip in, because we here in America love our free sauces. I guess elsewhere they don't necessarily. Hey, Chad Pennycuff's on board and says, howdy. Good to see you, Chad. Thanks for being here. He's a big time diehard. So that was one interesting observation. No free sauces. How about withdrawing cash? My first time going to the UK, there was only one thing we did the entire time where I needed cash. We were away from London. We were in the north of the country, so there's a lot more places where cash was needed or kind of needed, or I thought it might be needed. We actually did an activity called the Great Orme Tram, which was like riding this tram up a small mountain. And on the website, I could have sworn it said cash only, but when I got there, they did take cards, so I ended up with more cash than I needed. But interesting thing about ATMs, so this is a cash zone ATM, and up at the top it says free cash withdrawals and balance inquiries. If you look down here, it's got a symbol for Allpoint and Link. I think what it means is it's free if you're an Allpoint or Link customer, and I found this all over the United Kingdom. Free did not mean free, because once I got to the business end of things, I was withdrawing 40 pounds. There was a £3.99 fee, access fee. So apparently it's £4. Now, here's another interesting thing. Probably most of you know this, but I'll throw it out there in case you haven't traveled internationally before, because I owe a debt of gratitude to lots of other content creators for explaining this. Most ATMs outside the United States will give you the option of withdrawing your money in US currency or local currency, but fortunately, they do have enough consumer protection laws to disclose what they're doing. If you want them to exchange your money, if you want the ATM company to exchange it, they're going to do a rate of £1 to 1.559 US dollars. The natural exchange rate is more like £1 equals 1.35 US dollars. They're marking it up 13% and keeping that extra 13% as profit for them. So down here at the bottom, it says continue without conversion, continue with conversion. You're going to want to have a card like I do. My Schwab card, my Capital One card, ATM cards, both have no foreign conversion fees. So you're going to want to not do the conversion. So I would click the button that says continue without conversion, not with conversion. And then I'll get just the normal natural exchange rate. And I don't know, maybe Schwab, maybe Capital One takes a little something off the top. But if they do, it's like 1 or 2%, not anywhere close to the 13.8% this ATM company was trying to rip me off for. So yeah, there's your currency exchange lesson of the day. I think that's about all I have to say on that topic. But yeah, lots of ATMs that said free, but then they weren't actually free. A benefit to the Schwab debit card is, as long as you have a Schwab investment account of some kind, whether you actually use it or not, they will reimburse you all of your ATM fees. So I ended up getting the £3.99 fee reimbursed to me. Comments. Ian clarifies the succotash from earlier when I saw a bunch of mixed vegetables. Succotash is typically corn and lima beans sauteed with some diced peppers and onions, but the term has been hijacked pretty much to be anything that's diced and small and tossed together. Ian, are you my restaurateur? I believe you are. Thank you for that clarification. New Again's on board. Hey, how you doing? Anybody else hearing Doug as choppy at times? Ian says, very choppy here, but figured it was my crappy connection. Chad is also choppy. I'm really sorry about that. 1 bottle of water coming right up. I don't see any problems on my end. If it ends up being a persistent issue, let me know, and I'll do as much as I can. 7 70 people on board, which is okay. You know, I've never gone over 100 at one time. So keep on clicking thumbs up. If you drop a $1 super sticker, those help. Yuri G uses a grandfathered SoFi debit card abroad and instantly refunds ATM fees. Serious question. What did you need cash for? I'll think of just a couple off the top of my head here. First of all, I thought that Great Orm Tram mandated cash, but when I got there, I found out they didn't. In Vienna, Austria, the second half of the trip, we were walking to the Danube River just to see the river, and we stopped in this little shop that sold like pizza and hot dogs and stuff just to get a couple soft drinks. And when I got up, I started handing my credit card, and he said, "No card, cash only." So that random store I needed cash for. What else were the things we had to have cash for? There was an ice cream store where I sent my wife off to get something and she used cash. I don't know if she had to or just chose to. It seems like there was 4 or 5 places that were cash only. I can't remember what they were. Oh, I wanted to buy a postcard at a shop and it was 40 pence. And they said, due to the small amount, we're going to require cash. So apparently anything under 5 pounds or anything under 10 pounds, they required cash for that. I'll go through my... I gave a tip to the tour guide on one of my tours with cash. I'll go through some point and do a video where I break down all my expenses that'll have it in more details. But yeah, I needed a little more cash than I was expecting, but fortunately I was ready to go. New Again says, is Doug in England? He should be using the King's internet connection, not that Virgin or Sky connection. Nope, I'm back home now. Yuri says there's just some things you can't buy with a credit card in any country. QC Man says, if you choose the foreign conversion fee, do you still get charged a foreign transaction fee on the card if your card doesn't have no FTF anyway? If so, why even bother? Have the bank do the conversion. I think it's just a ripoff for tourists that don't know any better, quite frankly. I believe I heard someone say once, let's say you have a debit card that doesn't waive foreign transaction fees, they actually charge it, that you're going to get charged that either way, whether you do the conversion there or let them do it. If anybody knows, let me know. Furious Jason says, morning, long-time listener, first-time caller. Thanks for being here, Jason. Hope you're feeling more calm. You're not furious anymore. Jonathan Martinez says, hello, D, sending a big hello from Barcelona, Spain. Good to see you. QC Man's got a little choppy. Yuri is very choppy. Wonder if there's a setting I can adjust or anything here. Maybe it's the fact I haven't fired up my computer in a long time. I'll give it a little tap like when Han hits the dashboard on the Millennium Falcon. I'm sorry, folks, that it's so choppy. I honestly don't know why. Do I have a bunch of files open that I shouldn't have open? Where did I put that file with the video? Here's some good quality television. Yeah, I can't see anything, so sorry about the choppiness. I apologize. TM says, I've used the Fidelity CMA debit at an ATM Mexico, and it was refunded as soon as it posted. That's awesome. Hey, look, Ian drops a $1.99 super chat. Celebrate, says reset. You want me to leave the live stream and come back into it? I don't even know how to do that. I apologize. In Colombia, for example, it's hard to survive without cash, says Yuri. All right, moving along here. All right, now it's time to talk about the great rental car debate. So amongst my diehards, before I left 2 weeks ago, I posted this question. Let's say you're renting a car in Northern England. Which do you choose? Offer any input. A Hertz electric vehicle for $280 or an Enterprise gas vehicle for $400. And at that time, about 50 votes. It was 2-1. Basically, 64% said take the Enterprise gas vehicle, even though it's more than $100 more. Leave behind the Hertz electric vehicle. In the comment section, there was a few people that were just anti-Hertz for the reasons that we know about. But most people talked about things like, you know, if you're in a rural area, there is difficulty with trying to find enough charging stations. And I did point out so after we spent 3 days in New York, we did 4 days in Northern Wales at a cabin through cottages.com. Won't get into details on that today, but they did have a charging station there at the property. is that going to be adequate? I was kind of wondering what to do. Lots of people saying, yeah, you're going to have range anxiety. You don't have range anxiety. So what do you think that I did? Well, I'll give you a clue. Here's a picture of the vehicle that I ultimately ended up renting out, although that probably doesn't help out all that much with me standing next to it. So here is my original reservation, which was with Hertz. It was a Jeep Avenger EV or similar, which would have been 203 pounds, and that's about $275. I think I said 300, but it was closer to 275. And here is the Enterprise one, which I actually kept checking and was able to rebook it for less. So instead of being $400, it ended up being around $315, and I wrote down at the bottom $40 more. So yes, at this point, I will give away the lead here. I did end up going with the gas vehicle and booking through Enterprise instead. Now, one small disadvantage with that, I have present circle with Hertz, so I could have skipped the line if I'd done the EV. By the way, by the time I was ready to make my decision, Hertz had no gas vehicles that were automatic transmission at all. So that's why I couldn't go with Hertz for any sort of gas-powered vehicle. I went with this one. It was only $40 more, and I thought, you know, there are some points about range anxiety and that kind of stuff that I don't want to deal with. What ended up tipping me over the edge was I did a couple Google searches and found a post online by someone who was in the exact same part of Wales we were going to be in. I think this was maybe Reddit or a travel blog or something. Not that long ago, in September of 2024, so less than a year ago. And he said, basically, you know, this was a Brit. We own an electric vehicle and we want a vacation and we want to holiday in North Wales. You know, what's the experience going to be? And he did a after the fact report and he said, here's what I found. A lot of places that say they have EV chargers, they only have like 3, and one of them is almost always broken. So you've got like 6 people waiting in line to use the 2 available chargers. In fact, he referenced the very town I was going to be staying in and said there's only 1 charger in the whole town, you know, excluding, you know, the one at the cabin. And it's broken half the time. So somebody else was like, well, you should have used this app to plan out your trip and it'll tell you where you need to drive and when you need to drive. And I'm like, that's it. I don't want to be planning my driving around where the nearest charging station is. I just want to go where I want to go because my travel style sometimes is very impromptu. If I'm driving down a road and I see a sign for like historic marker 4 miles that way, I want to just have the freedom to go. You know, I don't want to necessarily be tied into on this day I need to go to this charging station and wait an hour to charge and those kind of thing. Ian says from 50 to 70 to 54, I think people are falling off because of the connection. If anybody knows what I can do about it, I'm open, but I really don't know. I mean, I could, I suppose, close it down and launch a whole new live stream. Do you think I should do that? Ian says it's getting worse, so maybe I should. Sometimes it's better, but mostly choppy. Yeah, okay, I'm gonna have to risk it for the biscuit. So the 50 of you that are on board, here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna end this live stream. I'm gonna quickly create a part B, which often takes me about 5 minutes. So hang in there and I'll be back. Just be watching for a whole new stream. So sorry, folks.